Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I really appreciate you being with me. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. And we continue here in southern Oklahoma to have some just, marvelous, marvelous fall weather. Not a lot of high wind, cool of a morning, wonderful during the day. So yeah, it's really really good. So anyway, thank you again for being with me. Pardon me. This is Thanksgiving week, so be on the alert. Thanksgiving, of course, is Thursday. I will not be producing a video at all on Friday, so this will be a somewhat of a short week. I'll do videos Monday through Wednesday. That will include video with Mike Sullivan on Wednesday evening. I'll have to see whether or not Zach Davis and I can do a video on Wednesday. Other than that, it'll be put off for a week. All right. I've got a ton of stuff to do in this short week, I can tell you that. So, we are continuing our study of the feast days of Israel as they relate to New Testament eschatology. Now, I have said this before, but let me say this again. Those of you who may possibly be from the amillennial world, and especially those from the Church of Christ background, all right, this may be a subject that strikes you as, what in the world is Preston talking about? The feast days and eschatology, the coming of the Lord, judgment, and resurrection. Well, very simply stated, the problem here is that in the amillennial world, it is firmly held that God was through with Israel and the old law at the cross. Therefore, any discussion of the feast days is irrelevant to eschatology because, after all, eschatology is supposedly about the end of the Christian age, the end of time. It supposedly doesn't have anything to do with the fulfillment of God's promises to Old Covenant Israel. But this is patently false. This was a shock to me as I learned in my own study that, for instance, in Colossians 2:16 and 17, where Paul said, "Do not let any man judge you in respect of new moons, feast days, and Sabbaths," but notice this. He said, "which are present active, a shadow of the good things that are about to come." So whatever it was that the feast days symbolized, foreshadowed, had not yet been realized, had not yet come to fulfillment. Okay, the feast days were an integral, vital, fundamental, critical part of the law. Just go to Leviticus 23, Numbers chapter 28, and see the extensive discussion there. And Jesus said, "Not one jot, not one tittle of the law shall pass until it is all fulfilled." So until what those feast days symbolized, foreshadowed, prefigured, came to fruition, nothing of the law could pass away. Pardon me. So when Paul affirms in Colossians, and when Hebrews affirms in Hebrews 9, Hebrews 10, that the ceremonial feast days, as some people like to call them, were still, when those books were written, those feast days were still, and the law was still, a type and a shadow of that which was coming. More specifically, was about to come. So again, if you are a member of the amillennial world, and specifically in the churches of Christ, I realize that these lessons can be, and undoubtedly are, kind of mind-blowing. I simply ask that you listen to what is presented. You go to your own Bible and you compare what it is saying with what I am sharing. I think you'll find that what I am sharing is accurate and true and proper. And to use the old cliche, this changes everything. Now, let me segue to that, to what I want to discuss today and probably the rest of this week. And that is that the Feast of Succot. Now, I have been telling you about it. It was introduced almost a year ago. One of my latest books entitled Resurrection Feast Fulfilled. It is a study of the connection between Israel's final feast day, Sukkot, and the resurrection. Well, here's the deal. Sukkot, as it's called, it was called the Feast of Harvest, Feast of Ingathering, etc., etc. That was the Feast of Harvest. At the first of the year, you had Pentecost, which was Feast of First Fruits, and that was barley and wheat. And then at the end of the year, at what they called the turning of the year, you had what they called the vintage harvest. By the way, some of you out there have helped me understand that even a little bit better. All right, so I appreciate that. I sort of kind of knew that. I don't know why I was mistaken as I explained it. But anyway, thanks for pointing it out to me. But Sukkot was the grapes, generally speaking, and other fruits. So you had two harvests, and you had two ingatherings. You had Feast of Fruits, Feast of the Harvest, Feast of First Fruits. Pentecost, which represented the wheat and the barley. Barley came first, and then the wheat. I think there's some significance there, by the way, as a little bit of a sidebar. Jesus was the first of the first fruit. That means that he was the first fruit of the barley, because the barley was the first. And then you have the wheat. And Christ was the first of the first fruit of the first fruit. He wasn't the first fruit of the wheat. I'm not going to go into that. I just think it's intriguing. I don't know how much weight to put on it, but that's the reality of the feast days. So, in Matthew chapter 13, we have the parable of the harvest. You're familiar with it, I'm sure. A man sowed seed in his field. The enemy came and sowed tares among the seed. The master's servants, as they begin to grow up together, the master's servants came to him and said, "Master, there are tares among the wheat. Do you want us to go and to root them up and to cast them into the fire?" And he said, "No, let them grow up together until the time of the harvest. Then go and gather in the tares first and cast them into the fire." Which, by the way, when Jesus said, "Gather up the tares first," that pretty well negates any doctrine of rapture. Because you see, in the doctrine of the rapture, whether that doctrine is AD 70 or whether it is the dispensational rapture, what are we told? Oh, it's the righteous who are gathered first. In fact, matter of fact, the wicked are not even gathered until the end of the age, or at the consummation of the harvest, not at the first fruits. You see the problem here? In other words, you can't have a doctrine that says, oh, well, there was an AD 70 rapture, but none of the wicked were taken because Jesus gave the order of the gathering gather the wicked first. That's problematic. And you can't have the righteous gathered at the end of the age, but then the wicked not gathered until the end of the millennium, because the wicked are gathered first. That's Jesus' own statement. All that aside, although it's important, what do we have? Well, in verse 39 and following, Jesus said, "So it shall be at the end of the age. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of the kingdom the things that offend and cast them into the fire." They would gather the righteous, gather them into the kingdom, or, quote, the barn, unquote. So once again, you're gathering the wicked, then the righteous. But when would it occur? It would occur at the end of the age. I was raised believing. I was raised teaching. I preached many lessons in which I said, Matthew 13 is about the end of the world, our world. It's the end of the Christian age. Listen to me very carefully. The Christian age, the age of Christ, sitting on the throne of David, ruling and reigning, has no end. Folks, do you catch the power of that? Some years ago, I had a formal public debate with Dr. David Hester of Faulkner University. The debate was held in Montgomery, Alabama. That debate was supposed to have been published. It was supposed to have been put on the interweb, as it's called. I was told recently, I will tell you this. Okay, number one, a book has never been produced of that. He and I had two debates. I published the first debate. But guess what? They chose not to publish the second debate. I know why. Anyone who attended knows why. All that was published, or all that was put on the internet, was David Hester's post-debate review at his home congregation. Because like I began to say, I've been told that the debate itself is not on the internet. Well, again, I think I know why, but got to hurry here. During the debate, Dr. Hester refused to just take a cold, hard stand on the end of the Christian age. I knew why he didn't want to take that stand, but nonetheless, I just point blank asked him about the end of the Christian age. Well, of course, he had to admit that's his view. So I got up and I produced a chart pointing out that in Isaiah chapter 9, 6-9, speaking of the rule and the reign of Christ over his kingdom, it says, "Of the increase of his kingdom, there shall be no end." Now, folks, that means there's no end to evangelism. And yet, one of the most foundational underlying doctrines of all eschatologies is, well, you know what? At the end of the age, there's not going to be any more evangelism because there's not going to be any more sin. No need for repentance. No need for conversion. Well, wait a minute. If the rule and the reign of Christ on his throne and of the increase of his government has no end, then guess what? All futurist eschatologies are wrong to say we're looking for the end of the age, end of the Christian age, in which there is no more sin, no more temptation, no more trials, no more evangelism. In Luke chapter 1, 32 and 33, the angel appeared unto Mary to tell her that she was going to give birth to the Son of God. And it says, he shall be given the throne of David, and of his rule, and of his reign, there shall be no end. That is an echo of Isaiah chapter 9. In Ephesians chapter 3, 20 and 21, unto him be glory in the church throughout all ages, age without end. G.K. Beale says of the Greek of that text, it is the strongest expression in the Greek language for endlessness. The strongest expression for endlessness in the entire Greek. So there'll be glory in the church, which was established on earth among men for evangelism. Unto him be glory in the church throughout all ages, age without end. Now, when I did that, when I produced that chart in the debate, there was literally, it was like an electric wave shock went through that audience. I saw people turning to their mates going, wow, wow. They caught the power of that. So let me just say this in conclusion this morning, that harvest at the end of the age. That's what Matthew 13, 39 and 40 says. Harvest is at the end of the age. I'll have more to say about that Greek term, perhaps tomorrow. Futurism says the harvest is at the end of the Christian age. The Bible says the Christian age has no end. Listen, folks, I discuss this extensively in my book, Resurrection Feast Fulfilled. Because you see, the doctrine of the resurrection, which is nothing but the doctrine of the fulfillment of Succot, that's what it is. And for the rest of this month, November 2024, U.S. orders only, go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com. There's a wonderful banner right up at the very top. Just click on it, order these two books, total delivered price, $39 and some odd change, but that will save you over $20. All right? Get this book in which I discuss the harvest at great length. There's information in there that you're not going to find in a whole lot of places. Here's today's conclusion. Harvest is the time of the fulfillment of Succot. Harvest would be at the end of the age. Therefore, Succot would be fulfilled at the end of the age. The Christian age has no end. Therefore, Succot will not be fulfilled, and that means resurrection will not be fulfilled at the end of the Christian age. Okay, at the end of what age is Succot linked to? And at the end of what age would Succot be fulfilled? Answer to that, either tomorrow or Wednesday, because I've got to develop this. This is critical. The entire doctrine of harvest is so incredibly important for understanding biblical eschatology. In the meantime, I'll see you on the flip side.